This podcast is brought to you by Free Buddhist Audio, the Dharma for your life. Our work is funded entirely by donations from our generous listeners. If you would like to help us keep this free, make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. Thank you, and happy listening.
So this morning we chanted the Tiratna Vandana, the first verse of which is revering, celebrating the Buddha. And it reads, "Such indeed is he, the richly endowed, the free, the fully and perfectly awake, equipped with knowledge and practice, the happily attained, knower of the worlds, guide unsurpassed of men to be tamed, the teacher of gods and men." And by doing that, we bring the Buddha to mind. Now, perhaps it's not every time we chant it, but on a good day, for myself at least, this can stir very positive things. I can experience the arising of joy, experience opening, I experience spaciousness, I experience light, I experience metta, and particularly I experience the arising of shraddha, or faith, confidence in the Buddha, a faith and a confidence that what the Buddha attained, that we too can attain. So that's why the practice of recollecting the Buddha is so important, and it's why it's been practiced from the earliest days of Buddhism. Buddha Smriti, recollection of the Buddha. So just bringing him to mind can produce very positive, very skillful states of mind, like the sun casting out the darkness. And indeed, this is one of the metaphors that's consistently used to describe the Buddha, the bringer of light, the shower of the way. So of course he has great qualities, some of which we explored in detail on these men's events last year, when we looked at his wisdom, his fearlessness, his great love, his compassion, and we could also add to these his spiritual intuition, his great courage, tenacity, energy. And he wasn't a showman concerned with making a great name for himself or building a great metaphysical system as an edifice to his greatness. Rather, he was merely concerned to lead as many folk as he could out of the maze of suffering and delusion. So there are, of course, in the tradition, many beautiful and inspiring verses recollecting and invoking the Buddha. But I want to share with you today, on this day which we've given over to celebrating Buddha, I want to share with you my own particular favourite. So it's Pingiya's praises to the way to the beyond. "I will sing you the praises of the way to the beyond," said Pingiya when he returned to where the Brahmin Barbari lived on the banks of the river Godavari. "It was described to us by this man exactly as he saw it. But then there isn't any reason why a man like him should lie, a mammoth of knowledge and completely pure, a man without desire. When a voice has none of the glibness of pride, and none of the ingrained stains of ignorance, then its words are full of sweetness and beauty. It is such words that I praise now. They call him Buddha, enlightened, awake, dissolving darkness with total vision, and knowing the world to its ends. He has gone beyond all the states of being and of becoming. He has no inner poison drives. He is the total elimination of suffering. This man, Brahmin Barbari, is the man I follow. It is like a bird that leaves the bushes of the scrubland and flies to the fruit trees of the forest. I too have left the bleary half-light of opinions. Like a swan, I have reached a great lake. Up till now, before I heard Gautama's teaching, people had always told me this. This is how it has always been, and this is how it will always be. Only the constant refrain of tradition, a breeding ground for speculation. This prince, this beam of light, Gautama, was the only one who dissolved the darkness. This man Gautama is a universe of wisdom and a world of understanding. A teacher whose dharma is the way things are, instant, immediate and visible, all around eroding desire without harmful side effects, with nothing else quite like it in the world. "But Pingiya," said Barbari, "why then don't you spend all your time, your every moment with this man Gautama, this universe of wisdom, this world of understanding, this teacher whose dharma is the way things are? instant, immediate, and visible all around, eroding desire without harmful side effects, and with nothing else quite like it anywhere in the world. Brahmin, sir, said Pingiya, there is no moment for me, however small, that is spent away from Gautama, from this universe of wisdom, this world of understanding. This teacher whose teaching is the way things are, instant, immediate, and visible all around, eroding desire without harmful side effects, with nothing else quite like it anywhere in the world. You see, sir, said Pingiya, with constant and careful vigilance, it's possible for me to see him with my mind as clearly as with my eyes, in night as well as day. And since I spend my nights revering him, there is not a moment to my mind, a single moment, spent away from him. I cannot now move away from the teaching of Gautama. The powers of confidence and joy, of intellect and awareness hold me there. Whichever way this universe of wisdom goes, it draws me with it. Physically, I cannot move like that. My body is decaying. I am old and weak, but the driving power of purposeful thought propels me with it without break. There was a time when, writhing in the mud of the swamps, I could only drift from one stone to the next. But then I saw the Sambuddha, fully awake and free from defilement. Then the Buddha spoke. Pingiya, he said, other people have freed themselves by the power of confidence. Vakali, Baharavudra, Ajavigotami, all have done this. You too should let that strength release you. You too will go to the further shore, beyond the draw of death. These words, said Pingiya, are the words of a man of wisdom. As I hear them, I become confident. This man is Sambuddha. He has opened the curtains and woken up. There is nothing barren there. His mind is clear and luminous. Everything accessible to knowledge is known to him, even the ultimate subtleties of Godhood. There are no more questions for the doubtful who come to him. The teacher has answered them all. Yes, I shall go there. I shall go beyond change. I shall go beyond formations. I shall go beyond comparisons. There are no more doubts. You may consider this as mind released. So this is a very beautiful and evocative celebration of the Buddha. And it comes from the Sutta Nipata, which is understood to be some of the earliest verses of the Pali Canon, which itself is the earliest strata of the Buddhist teachings. And it's not only a beautiful evocation of some of the qualities of the Buddha, but it also contains within it some very pithy teachings. And in celebrating the Buddha, we are by definition celebrating the Dharma, the teaching of the Buddha, which leads from darkness to light. So I'm just going to explore the text to see what Dharmic gems might be residing there to help us on our own journey. So first of all, he says, I will sing you the praises to the way to the beyond, said Pingiya. It was described to us by this man exactly as he saw it. So these particular verses appear in a section of the Sutta Nipata devoted to the way to the beyond. So firstly, what is the way to the beyond? Well, it's alluding to the way beyond suffering, and it's alluding to nirvana. The Buddha is often quoted as saying, I teach two things. I teach suffering and I teach the end of suffering. So the way to the beyond is the way beyond suffering, the way to nirvana itself. And we will have a look towards the end of the talk what might be meant by nirvana. But at this point we can say that in other suttas, in other teachings the Buddha himself alludes to, he refers to the way beyond as suffering, the way to the beyond as suffering as the fourth noble truth. That is the Noble Eightfold Path. Of course, the first truth is that there is suffering. The second truth is that the cause of suffering is craving, and its flip side, aversion. The third truth is the cessation of suffering, which is that it can be overcome by going beyond craving. And the fourth truth is the path leading to the cessation of suffering, which is the Noble Eightfold Path, namely right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So Pingiya goes on to say, it was described to us by this man exactly as he saw it. So this is one of the characteristics of the Buddha and his teachings. It's not about learning particular things, though that can be useful. It's certainly not about just believing particular things or holding views about particular things, but rather it's clearly seeing particular things for oneself. Vision is the means by which the Buddha became enlightened. And it's interesting that the first limb of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view. Bhante Sangharakshita in his talks entitled Vision and Transformation uses the term perfect vision rather than right view. And in the wider Buddhist tradition, the distinction is made between mundane right view and supramundane right view. So mundane right view is a clear understanding that in Bhante Sangharakshita's expression, actions have consequences. That is, it's a clear understanding, at least a clear conceptual understanding of the law of karma. Whereas supramundane right view, or perfect vision as Bhante terms it, is a deep penetration, a deep seeing into things as they really are. That is, that all things arise and pass away in dependence upon conditions. So it's a deep seeing of the principle of paticca samuppada, conditioned arising and dependent origination, as it's sometimes termed. That is, all things arise and pass away in dependence upon conditions, and consequently all conditioned things are impermanent, unsatisfactory and insubstantial. It's a deep seeing of the reality behind this principle in general, and of its particular application when applied to the problem of suffering, that is, the Four Noble Truths. So it's not just a passing glimpse of the Four Noble Truths, but a comprehension of them at the deepest level of one's being, such that it completely transforms the way one views reality. I must say I love the way the Buddha's teachings always lead you back to the same things, but from a slightly different angle. So the first limb of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is itself the Fourth Noble Truth, contains within it the Fourth Noble Truths. In the Mahayana, there's Vairocana's tower, in which one tower is contained within all the other towers. And it's a bit like that. The Dharma is a bit like that. Wherever you go in to examine it, you sort of emerge somewhere else. And you keep folding, it keeps folding back on itself, leads you back into inquiries over the same ground. So the Buddha, in talking about his enlightenment, says, I directly knew it as it actually is. These are the taints. This is the origin of the taints. This is the cessation of the taints. This is the way leading to the cessation of the taints. When I knew and saw thus, my mind was liberated from the taint of sensual desire, from the taint of existence, and from the taint of ignorance. When it was liberated, there came the knowledge, it is liberated, I directly knew. Birth is destroyed, the spiritual life has been lived. What has had to be done has been done. There is no more coming back to any state of being. And he not only saw the nature of the conditioned, but he saw through the conditioned to the unconditioned. He saw beyond all that is conditioned to that which is unconditioned, nirvana. As Bhante says, perfect vision is a vision, first of all, of our actual present state of bondage to conditioned existence. It's also a vision of our potential state of enlightenment. And finally, it's a vision of the path, or way leading from one to the other. A vision, if you like, of the whole future course of evolution. So back to Pingiya. He goes on to describe the Buddha as a mammoth of knowledge and completely pure, a man without desire. A mammoth of knowledge. So mammoth conveying something extremely large and substantial. And as already indicated, the Buddha's knowledge came from direct seeing, not from idle speculation or reasoning, but from direct seeing. Completely pure, a man without desire. As quoted above, the Buddha saw the taints, their origin, their cessation, and the way leading to their cessation. And seeing thus, his mind was liberated from the taints. So the taints, the ashivas in Pali, also translated as the influxes, the cankers, the corruptions, are sense desire, desire for existence, and ignorance. And sometimes a fourth taint, or canker, is alluded to, and that's wrong view. However, being liberated from the taints, the Buddha's consciousness is completely purified. No desire arises within it, either for objects of the senses, nor for existence or non-existence. No ill will, and no delusion about the nature of reality. It is stainless. In a passage in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha is quoted as saying that this consciousness is luminous, but is defiled by adventitious defilements. The adventitious defilements, or kleshas, are unwholesome states of mind rooted in the cankers. Adventitious means coming from outside, not inherent to. So an ordinary consciousness is visited and defiled by the kleshas, but the Buddha, having destroyed the taints, has destroyed the defilements, and consequently his consciousness is completely pure. Indeed, one of the definitions of enlightenment is that it's the complete eradication, the complete destruction of greed, hatred, and delusion. So Pingiya then goes on to describe the Buddha as someone who speaks with none of the glibness of pride and none of the ingrained stains of ignorance. And consequently his words are full of sweetness, full of beauty. So the glibness of pride. I looked up glib in the dictionary and it defined it as one who has a ready flow of words but is lacking in thought or understanding. Superficial, shallow, smooth or slippery. The glibness of pride. So it's suggestive of the speech of one who has a rather inflated opinion of themselves. And pride, of course, is based in conceit. That is, that I am a particular person and that I am, usually in the case of pride, better than other people. However, conceit is about comparison, so it includes not being as good as, or being just the same as others. So this, of course, relates back to and is initially based in Sakyaditi, personality view, and is the first of the 10 fetters that bind us to the wheel of existence. The belief that we are a separate, discrete individual with certain unchanging qualities and characteristics. And as well as being the first fetter, it also appears under the 9th nidana as clinging, upadana, in the chain of rebecoming. So that's the 12 links which lead to rebecoming in conditioned existence, the 12 links which lead to suffering. So the conditionally arisen sequence which produces suffering which the Buddha brought to a stop on the night of his enlightenment, that is, in dependence upon craving, arises clinging. So the first thing we unenlightened beings cling to is this personality view. And this is backed up by another aspect of clinging, that is that we tenaciously cling to views. Why do we do that? Why do we tenaciously cling to views? Well, because we derive a sense of identity from them. The Buddha urged us to hold even right view lightly. Right view, when clung onto too tightly, through the very process of clinging, becomes wrong view. So it's something we need to be aware of in our own selves, in our lives, and in our practice. And it's easy enough to detect both in ourselves and in others. How tightly am I holding on to a view? Is it possible for me to have an open, interested discussion around a subject, or do I start getting defensive and irritated when this view is questioned? Does it all start getting rather emotional? If emotion starts arising, it's a sure sign of clinging. The Buddha didn't get upset if people disagreed with him. Indeed, he refused to enter into disputes, although, as he said, the world was very keen to dispute with him. So views are a way of building our identity, and if they are challenged, we may feel that we are personally under attack. Invariably with a view, we of course think we're right. This leads to a certain pride, maybe subtle or maybe grandiose, but all part of the process of trying to build up and maintain a personal sense of identity. But the Buddha himself has, in Pingiya's words, none of the ingrained stains of ignorance, and consequently his words are full of sweetness, full of beauty. Perhaps through imagination we could put ourselves in a situation where the Buddha is talking directly to us. I imagine I wouldn't experience that he himself was trying to derive anything from the encounter, not trying to build himself up by showing how clever he is, but rather he would just be concerned to lead me towards clarity, towards the truth for my long-term benefit. And the truth would be sweet and full of beauty, resonating in the deepest recesses of my being. So maybe we experience that for ourselves in a more limited way, just by reading a Dharma text. Sometimes when I read the Dharma, and I get a warm feeling in my chest and a deep feeling of well-being, that I am actually in touch with the truth. And there is that saying which they often quoted, that beauty is truth and truth is beauty. So the truth is beautiful, and hence the Buddha's words are full of sweetness, full of beauty. No wonder Pingiya talked about leaving behind the bleary half-light of opinions, and that like a swan he had reached a great lake. So the next thing Pingiya says is they call him Buddha, enlightened, awake, dissolving darkness with total vision, knowing the world to its ends. He has gone beyond all the states of being and becoming. He has no inner poison drives. He is the total elimination of suffering. So we've already touched upon the fact that the Buddha is enlightened, that he is awake, that he's eradicated greed, hatred and delusion, that his vision dissolves the darkness of ignorance. But what does the next phrase mean? Knowing the world to its ends. What does that mean? In the Rotissa Sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha is questioned by a young deva, a young god. Is it possible, Lord, by travelling to know or see or reach a far end of the world, where one does not take birth, age, die, pass away or reappear? To which the Buddha replies, I tell you, friend, that it is not possible by travelling to know or see or reach a far end of the world, where one does not take birth, age, die, pass away, or reappear. However, he then goes on to say, but at the same time, I tell you, there is no making an end of suffering without reaching the end of the world. Yet it is just within this fathom-long carcass, with its perception and intellect, that I declare that there is the world, the origination of the world, the cessation of the world, and the path of practice leading to the cessation of the world. So again, it's that formulation we saw in the Four Noble Truths. But what does this mean? Ananda explains elsewhere that in the Noble One's discipline, the world is that in the world by which one is a perceiver and conceiver of the world, i.e. the six sense bases, which are the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, body and the mind. Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's a Theravadan monk and the translator of the most recent Samyutta Nikaya, explains, the world with which the Buddhist teaching is principally concerned is the world of experience. And even the objective world is of interest only to the extent that it serves as a necessary external condition for experience. This world is identified with the six sense bases because the latter are the necessary internal condition for experience, and hence and thus for the presence of a world. As long as the six sense bases persist, a world will always be spread out before us as the objective range of perception and cognition. Thus one cannot reach the end of the world by travelling. For wherever one goes, one inevitably brings along the six sense bases, which necessarily disclose a world extended on all sides. Nevertheless, by reversing the direction of the search, it is possible to reach the end of the world. For if the world ultimately stems from the six sense spaces, then by bringing an end to the sense spaces, it's possible to arrive at the end of the world. So this links in with the next thing Pingiya says. He has gone beyond all states of being and becoming. And this links back to the chain of re-becoming, which is the conditionally arisen sequence that the Buddha taught to as leading suffering. And what bhikkhus is dependent origination. With ignorance as condition, volitional formations come to be. With volitional formations as condition, consciousness comes to be. With consciousness as condition, name and form come to be. With name and form as condition, the 6 sense bases come to be. With the 6 sense bases as condition, contact comes to be. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be. With feeling as condition, craving comes to be. With craving as condition, clinging comes to be. With clinging as condition, existence comes to be. With existence as condition, birth comes to be. With birth as condition, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. This, bhikkhus, is called dependent origination. So by bringing this sequence of conditionally arisen events to an end, one effectively brings the whole world of suffering to an end. So the Buddha, having regard to the principle of paticcasamuppada, dependent origination or condition arising, reflected on what was the supporting condition for old age and death, birth. And he clearly saw that if the supporting condition ceased, then so would old age and death. Thus he worked through the whole sequence of cessation. From the cessation of birth, old age and death cease. From the cessation of becoming, birth ceases. From the cessation of clinging, becoming ceases. From the cessation of craving, clinging ceases. From the cessation of feeling, craving ceases. From the cessation of contact, feeling ceases. From the cessation of the 6 sense bases, contact ceases. From the cessation of name and form, the 6 sense bases cease. From the cessation of consciousness, name and form cease. From the cessation of volitional formations, consciousness ceases. From the cessation of ignorance, volitional formations cease. And this, of course, is the actual realization of the third noble truth, the truth of the cessation of suffering. As Pingiya said, he has gone beyond all states of being and becoming. The wheel of life has stopped for the Buddha, or rather what has stopped in his own consciousness are the volitions based on wanting and grasping, which lead to the emanation of the world. Thus in Pingiya's word, he has no inner poison drives. He is the total elimination of suffering. So Pingiya goes on to say, this prince, this beam of light, Gautama was the only one who dissolved the darkness. This man Gautama is a universe of wisdom and a world of understanding. A teacher whose dharma is the way things are, instant, immediate, and visible all around. Eroding desire without harmful side effects, with nothing else quite like it in the world. So Buddha's own realization and subsequent teaching is the light that dissolves the darkness of ignorance. And I really like this imagery as the Buddha being the bringer of light, being a lamp amid the darkness of ignorance. And I can relate to it as particularly before I encountered the Dharma. My experience of my life was that I certainly seemed to be blundering around in the dark, bumping into things, and desperately trying to hang on to something through the fear of separateness. And later, Pingiya describes the state of ignorance somewhat graphically as arising in the mud of the swamps, drifting from one stone to the next. Well, I don't know about you, but I think I've done my fair share of writhing in the mud of the swamps and drifting from one stone to the next. I thought a stone might be a synonym for a public house now. Oh, anyway, so in this verse he goes on to describe the Buddha as a teacher whose dharma is the way things are, instant, immediate, and visible all around, eroding desire without harmful side effects, with nothing else quite like it in the world. And here Pingiya is referring to the fact that actually if one begins to practice the Dharma, then its effects become immediately apparent in one's own life. As the Buddha often said, come and see for yourself. And this is one of the great things about Buddhism, to my mind anyway. You are simply encouraged to try it out and see what happens in your own experience. And generally speaking, I think most people find, probably most of us here anyway, that if we give it a reasonably good go, then we pretty quickly see that it has a positive effect on the quality of our lives. I know it did for me, and I hear it a lot from people who come along to meditation and Dharma classes in Norwich. And okay, maybe it takes a little longer for our desires to be eroded, but this does eventually begin to happen, particularly if we see in our own experience that to be in a state of craving is actually to be in a state of suffering. So later, Pingiya and the print on my speech has gone a little ruffled here. Later, Pingiya recollects the Buddha speaking to him. Other people have released themselves by the power of confidence. Vakali, Bhadravuddha, and Alavi Gotami have all done this. You too should let that strength release you. You too will go to the further shore, beyond the draw of death. So we have given the Buddha's teaching a go. We've tried to implement it in our own lives, and more probably than not, we begin to see that it does have an effect. It does have an impact. This is not theoretical. This is experiential. We have engaged in empirical research and found the results to be positive. So from this emerges confidence in the teachings, confidence in the Buddha, confidence in the Dharma, and confidence in our companions on the path, i.e. the Sangha. And the confidence in the teaching is one aspect of Shraddha, faith. We have faith in something because we have seen that it works in our own experience. And in the context that Pingiya is referring to, the Buddha is saying that the power of confidence has the strength to release you, to propel you to the further shore, beyond the draw of death. And this puts me in mind of the teaching that Bhante has particularly highlighted on what he terms as spiral conditionality. Earlier I talked about the cyclic conditionality, but the sequence or cessation leading to the end of suffering, which we went into in some detail, only gives a partial impression of the process leading to enlightenment, highlighting as it does just the eradication of unwholesome factors. However, the eradication of suffering is also coextensive with the development and maturation and arising of very, very positive factors. So in the spiral we get a whole sequence of very positive states arising, leading all the way to enlightenment. And the second link in this process is Shraddha, faith. This is then followed by joy and subsequently 9 other links leading all the way through to liberation, enlightenment. And incidentally, the first link is dukkha, suffering, as the Buddha said. And what is the result of suffering? There are some cases in which a person overcome with pain, his mind exhausted, grieves, mourns, laments, beats his breast and becomes bewildered. I've done plenty of that. Or one who overcome with pain, his mind exhausted, comes to search outside, who knows a way or two to stop this pain. I tell you, monks, that suffering results in bewilderment or in search. So although we don't really have time to explore the spiral in this talk, it's a fascinating and inspiring teaching, and it's well worth looking at when you have the time. Bhante Sangha actually deals with it in his books, The Three Jewels and What is the Dharma. And Divan's more recent book, This Being That Becomes, also goes into it in some details. Or you could just ask your local Mitra convener, as I'm sure they spend quite a lot of their time just hanging out on the spiral. So, Pingiya continues. These words are words of a man of wisdom. As I hear them, I become more confident. This man, this Sambuddha, He has opened up the curtains and woken up. There is nothing barren there. His mind is clear and luminous. So again, Pingiya conveys his growing confidence in the Buddha, that he's a man of wisdom. And one sense is that this confidence permeates Pingiya's whole way of being. That he's completely receptive to the Buddha's message. That there are no blocks, no doubts, no holding back. Then we have this rather interesting metaphor. He has opened up the curtains and woken up. I rather like that. It feels quite modern, doesn't it? One jumps out of bed and opens up the curtains. Okay, perhaps in the summer. I can't say there's too much jumping up and opening curtains in our house at the moment. But I wonder, and it's just a guess, but perhaps it's an image to convey the pulling aside the veils of illusion, the veils of ignorance, and letting the light in. Again, letting the light in to what was previously a dark place. And on, there is nothing barren there. His mind is clear and luminous. This is just a beautiful image. There's nothing barren there. His mind is clear and luminous. Earlier we touched on the luminosity of the enlightened mind, untouched as it is by any arisings of greed, hatred and delusion, like a vast evanescent blue sky, completely open and empty. And then Pingiya goes on to say, everything accessible to knowledge is known to him, even the ultimate subtleties of Godhood. There are no more questions for the doubtful who come to him. The teacher has answered them all. And in the Aripariyasana Sutta, shortly after his enlightenment, the Buddha declared, all vanquishing, all knowing am I, with regard to all things, unadhering. All abandoning, released in the end of craving. Having fully known on my own, to whom should I point as my teacher? I have no teacher, and one like me can't be found. In the world with its devas, I have no counterpart. For I am an arahant in the world. I, the unexcelled teacher, I alone am rightly self-awakened. Cooled am I, unbound. To set rolling the wheel of the Dharma, I go to the city of Kasi. In a world become blind, I beat the drum of the deathless. And in the Simpasa Sutta, the Buddha takes a few Simpasa leaves in his hands and says to the monks, what do you think, monks? Which are the more numerous, the few leaves I have here in my hand, or those up in the trees of the grove? Lord, the Blessed One, is holding only a few leaves. Those up in the trees are far more numerous. In the same way, monks, there are many more things I have found out, but not revealed to you. So in a footnote to this exchange, Maurice Walsh, the translator of the Digha Nikaya, the Long Discourse of the Buddha, suggests that the Buddha was naturally aware of many things unknown to others, which he did not deem it necessary to teach for the gaining of enlightenment. We can accept that the Buddha was at least potentially aware of whatever he wished or needed to know. He knew precisely which religious and philosophical doctrines that were or might be propounded were A, true, and B, conducive to enlightenment. He borrowed nothing as such from previous systems because he did not need to, but he gave his approval to whatever conformed to these criteria. And this interpretation is backed up by Bhante, who says, some people of the Buddha's time seem to have thought enlightenment as being a complete factual knowledge about everything that exists. However, the Buddha said quite clearly that he did not possess this kind of knowledge. He was not all-knowing in the sense that he literally knew everything. All he claimed was that he knew nirvana and the path leading to nirvana. And he knew what helped and what hindered one as one sought to follow the path. So in other words, the Buddha was a spiritual omniscience. So Pingiya's assertion does not seem to be unfounded, that everything accessible to knowledge is known to him, even the ultimate subtleties of Godhood. And he is unequivocal. There are no more questions for the doubtful who come to him. The teacher has answered them all. I think perhaps this last statement is pointing to the sheer impact that the Buddha's presence would have on someone. There are quite a few suttas in the Nikayas where people on hearing the Buddha give a teaching become stream entrants. That is, the first 3 fetters are broken on the spot. And this can cause quite a bit of head scratching for us. Well, I've read and studied that teaching a few times, and nothing has happened to me. But what we're not taking into account is the presence of the Buddha himself, this beautiful, radiant being, exuding peace, equanimity and wisdom. To have been in the presence of the Buddha must have been a very strong experience. So I imagine to encounter the Buddha, to hear the teaching from his own mouth, would for most people dispel their doubts. Indeed, as indicated, there were those who, hearing the Buddha's teaching, became stream entrants on the spot, and for them the fetter of doubt and indecision would have been irreversibly broken. So Pingiya goes on, yes, I shall go there. I shall go beyond change. I shall go beyond formations. I shall go beyond comparison. There are no more doubts. You may consider this as mind released. So in saying that he will go there, I think he's referring to the further shore, beyond the draw of death. So he's alluding to the deathless, which is a synonym for nirvana. And another synonym for nirvana is the unconditioned. And this links well with the next statement, that he will go beyond formations. Now the formations he is referring to are the volitional formations which keep the whole wheel turning, the second link in the 12 Nidanas. The Pali for volitional formations is sankhara, which means compounded, put together, constructed. The past participle of sankhara is sankhata, which Bhikkhu Bodhi translates as conditioned. Hence, sankhata stands in contradistinction to asankhata, which is commonly translated as unconditioned. And another rendering of samskara is constructing activity. And the Buddha says, they are called samskaras because they construct the conditioned. So as we saw earlier, that which is conditionally arisen is in a continual process of change and eventually passes away. So what Pingiya is referring to as being beyond change is the unconditioned. This is because it's not compounded, it's not put together, and it's not conditionally arisen. Hence it's not subject to change. Hence he will go beyond change. The mind that's no longer under the sway of the samskaras, of greed, hatred and delusion, no longer constructs the conditioned. As such, it's unconditioned. And this is the mind that's released from constructing the process of the round of existence. Furthermore, Pingiya has gone beyond comparison because we can assume he has broken the first fetter that binds beings to the wheel of existence, that of personality view, and the 8th fetter, that of conceit. He does not compare himself with others as inferior, superior, or the same as. And there are no more doubts because he's broken the second fetter, sceptical doubt. So Pingiya's praises to the way beyond is a beautiful evocation of the Buddha and a clear exposition of the effectiveness of the Dharma that he proclaims. And there is a sutta where the Buddha himself describes how he, having set out to discover and escape from suffering of a conditioned existence, discovers the way to the beyond. It's entitled The Ancient City, and the Buddha describes it as follows. It is just as if a man, travelling along a wilderness track, were to see an ancient path, an ancient road, travelled by people of former times. He would follow it. Following it, he would see an ancient city, an ancient capital, inhabited by people of former times, complete with parks, groves and ponds, walled, delightful. He would go to address the king or the king's minister, saying, Sire, you should know that while travelling along a wilderness track, I saw an ancient path. I followed it. I saw an ancient city, an ancient capital, complete with parks, groves and ponds, walled, delightful. Sire, rebuild that city. The king or king's ministers would rebuild the city, so that at a later date the city would become powerful, rich and well populated, fully grown and prosperous. In the same way, I saw an ancient path, an ancient road, travelled by the rightly self-awakened ones of former times. And what is that ancient path, that ancient road, travelled by the rightly self-awakened ones of former times? Just this noble eightfold path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is the ancient path, the ancient road travelled by the rightly self-awakened ones of former times. I followed that path. Following it, I came to direct knowledge of aging and death, direct knowledge of the origination of aging and death, direct knowledge of the cessation of aging and death, direct knowledge of the path leading to the cessation of aging and death. Knowing that directly, I revealed it to monks, nuns, male lay followers and female lay followers, so that this holy life has become powerful, rich, detailed, well populated, widespread, proclaimed among celestial and human beings. So maybe the best way for us to celebrate the Buddha is to set out on the journey to the ancient city, set out on the road to enlightenment, and to do so by fully embracing his teaching and realizing the eightfold path for ourselves in this very life. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. Please help us keep this free. Make a contribution at freebuddhistaudio.com/donate. And thank you